Haha, I just had a blast with the $18,000 you saved up recently, my mother-in-law Danielle announced triumphantly over the phone. I had just returned from a 7-day overseas trip, and her words struck me like a bolt of lightning. $18,000? Saved up? What was she talking about? I had no memory of saving that kind of money. As a freelance jewelry designer, I certainly had some savings for emergencies, but that was tucked away in my bank account. I didn't keep large sums of cash on hand, and my debit card was always with me. No one else could withdraw that much money. You did give it to me, so I took it from the sideboard drawer. You guys are rich, it's fine. Danielle's voice oozed with a careless confidence that made my stomach churn. What I don't understand, I started, but Danielle cut me off. But it seems you had fun, thank you. Count on me for next time. And with that, the call ended. $18,000, what money could that be? This question haunted me until Anthony, my husband, returned home that night. Ah, so that's what it was, he said, a grim expression settling on his face. A month later, my phone was bombarded with calls from Danielle. I ignored them at first, but when the missed call count climbed over 80, I started to feel a sense of dread. It's baffling, but it's her fault, I muttered to myself as my phone buzzed again with Danielle's name flashing across the screen. I was tempted to ignore it, but her persistence wore me down. I answered, my voice laced with irritation. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Danielle's shrill voice pierced through the phone's speaker. What does she mean? She's reaping what she sowed. My name is Lauren. I'm a 31-year-old freelance jewelry designer. I long to have children, but my work keeps me incredibly busy. My husband Anthony is the same age as me. He used to have a corporate job, but he bravely quit to become my business manager. When we first married, my design work was sporadic, and we relied heavily on Anthony's income. But as I approached 30, my work stabilized, and I desperately needed help managing my schedule. It looks tough. Can I help with anything? Anthony, who held a promising position with potential for advancement, offered without hesitation. He quit his job and became my business partner. With Anthony handling the business side, we now have deals with renowned international brands. Even though we were successful as a couple, we still faced our share of problems. Most stemmed from Anthony's mother, Danielle, who lived alone at his family home. Danielle believed we were living a life of luxury and frequently came asking for money. You always seem to be living so lavishly. I'm jealous, she'd say, her voice dripping with envy. As a jewelry designer, I'm often invited to new product launch parties or dinners with company executives. For me, these events are essential business activities, a crucial part of my job. But to Danielle, they seemed like nothing more than frivolous leisure, and she demanded the same lifestyle for herself. I want to throw a party for my friends soon. Can you give me some money for it? Of course, I could afford to give her money, but just because she asked, it might have looked glamorous from the outside, but maintaining our lifestyle was costly, and there were business obligations I couldn't simply ignore. We're not living in luxury, Danielle. This is all part of our work. Dressing up, eating at expensive places. It's necessary. I tried to reason with her, but my words fell on deaf ears. I envy you, she'd reply with a sarcastic bite. Danielle simply refused to understand. While I consistently refused Danielle's requests, Anthony, being her son, sometimes gave in. He handed her money, hoping it would appease her. If giving her a little money keeps her quiet, then it's a small price to pay, he'd say, sighing. For Anthony, giving Danielle money was easier than dealing with her constant interruptions and demands that disrupted our work. But as we soon discovered, Danielle's demands only escalated, leaving us both at our wits' end. I need a new dress for an upcoming gathering I've been invited to, Danielle announced just the other day, barging into our house and pestering Anthony. A dress? Wouldn't a two-piece suit work? Anthony countered, hoping for a more affordable option. We had been asked to buy Danielle clothes before, and there were undoubtedly cheaper options available, but what Danielle wanted was undeniably expensive. It's a fancy party. Everyone will be dressed up. I can't be the only one in old clothes, Danielle argued, her voice rising in a dramatic crescendo. I think proper attire, old or new, shouldn't matter, I interjected, trying to reason with her. Oh, speaking of dresses, I need a matching bag too, so I'm counting on you for that. And with that, Danielle flounced out, leaving Anthony and me to deal with the financial fallout. Anthony had set up a credit card in Danielle's name because of her frequent requests for money. He had urged her to use it for her expenses. At first, she overspent and received warnings from Anthony, but she showed no sign of changing her ways. Anthony asked her to at least inform us before making large purchases, so she begrudgingly began to tell us what she intended to buy. "I found this beautiful ring and just had to buy it. Sorry for the after-the-fact notice," she'd say casually, and the bill that arrived later would be astronomical. "If you're going to spend like this, can you return the card? We can't afford to pay for it all." Anthony tried to reason with her, but his words bounced off her like rubber bullets. The card may have been in Danielle's name, but Anthony was footing the bill. Danielle seemed to operate under the delusion that a credit card was a bottomless well of magic money. "A credit card isn't a magic money dispenser, Danielle. What you spend must be paid for." Despite Anthony's attempts to explain the concept of responsible credit card use, Danielle continued to use the card recklessly. "What the heck? I couldn't pay for my shopping the other day." She stormed in one afternoon, her face contorted with anger. "We're struggling with the payments because of your overspending, so we've lowered your monthly limit. It's still enough, right?" Anthony said, his voice tight with frustration. "Just because you say that, you two are still dressing up and going to fancy places. How is what I'm doing any different?" Danielle retorted, her eyes blazing with defiance. "That's part of our job, Danielle." I tried to explain, but Danielle was having none of it. "If that's a job, then what I'm doing isn't any different. It's unfair that only you two get to have all the fun," she spat, storming out of the house in a huff. The product launches and parties we attended often took place in luxury hotel event halls or restaurants, but our attendance was purely for work purposes. To Danielle, it seemed like we were just indulging in a life of extravagance and amusement. Ever since Anthony put a limit on her credit card spending, Danielle seemed to have quieted down, at least for a little while. She occasionally came to our house to complain about something to Anthony, but for the most part, life went on without any major issues. As the end of the year approached, however, there was a significant change in my work. A foreign brand manufacturer approached me with a proposal to expand our business dealings by moving our base overseas. I was ecstatic. If this worked out, I could finally join the ranks of top-tier designers. "It's a chance we have to take, right? Opportunities like this are rare," Anthony agreed, sharing my excitement, but a nagging worry gnawed at me. "I'm worried about Mom. She might even say she wants to come with us." Given Danielle's past behavior, it was a very real and very daunting concern. "It would be wonderful to live overseas. I want to come too." We told Danielle about our plans that weekend, and as we predicted, her response was immediate and enthusiastic. "We're going there for work. It's not going to be a leisurely life," Anthony explained patiently, trying to temper her expectations. But Danielle was not easily dissuaded. "You're trying to trick me. You plan to live even more lavishly there without me watching." "We're not moving there permanently. We'll come back after our work settles down overseas," Anthony insisted, his patience wearing thin. "Aren't you exhausted by this circular argument?" I whispered to Anthony, my shoulders slumping with defeat. We were both utterly drained from trying to reason with Danielle. "Okay, we can't take you with us, but how about we pay for a week-long trip for you instead?" Anthony offered, worn down from trying to convince her. "Really? Are you sure?" Danielle's face lit up, her earlier indignation forgotten. "We'll cover your flight and hotel, but the rest is up to you," I clarified, hoping to set some boundaries. Danielle left, half happy but not entirely satisfied. As we suspected, the peace didn't last long. A few days later, while Anthony was busy with the overseas move arrangements, Danielle visited our house again. "Hey, Lauren, Anthony said that, but I want to shop over there too. Can you give me some money?" she demanded, her tone laced with entitlement. "What about the card that Anthony gave you?" I asked, knowing there was a credit card she was supposed to be using. "That's the thing. Anthony finally took it away from me the other day," Danielle admitted, a pout forming on her lips. It seemed she had been admonished for her excessive spending and had her credit card privileges revoked. Perhaps Anthony was worried she would misuse the card with the fluctuating currency rates overseas, I thought. But I didn't have that kind of money on hand either. "I can't give you money without Anthony's approval," I stated firmly. "Can you ask him?" Danielle pleaded. "It's no use asking him. That's why I'm asking you," she insisted, raising her voice in frustration as she left our house. Over the new year, Danielle went on her 7-day trip abroad. I assumed Anthony had somehow managed the money for her trip. However, upon her return, Danielle revealed an unbelievable truth. "I'm back! It was so fun!" Danielle's excited voice filled my ears as she called to share her sightseeing and dining experiences, unsolicited. "And I overbought souvenirs. Couldn't fit them in my suitcase, so I had them shipped from there. Can't wait for them to arrive." "That's nice," I replied, my voice flat with growing annoyance. "Thanks to the money you saved up, I had a blast," Danielle chirped, her words sending a wave of confusion through me. "Saved up money? What are you talking about?" I had no recollection of setting aside any money for her trip. Sure, I had some savings for business emergencies, but that money was safely stored in my bank account, a place where Danielle couldn't possibly withdraw cash from. "You didn't notice, you're surprisingly oblivious," Danielle chided, her tone lightly despite the gravity of the situation. Despite her insistence, I had no memory of saving up any money for her. "I found it in your house's sideboard drawer, $18,000. What money? Why should such money be there?" Danielle's casual revelation sent my mind into a tailspin. I couldn't imagine us keeping cash at home, especially not such a large amount, tucked away in a drawer. Confused and alarmed, I said to Danielle, "I'm not sure what money you're talking about, but if you took it from our house without permission, that's theft. Even if you are family, do you understand? That's a serious crime." "That's why I'm telling you now that I used it," Danielle said nonchalantly. I was dumbfounded by her flippant response. "I have no idea about this money, but if you took it and used it without saying anything, it's a crime. And if it was something Anthony had set aside for an important deal, it's even more serious," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. I distinctly remembered that there hadn't been any disruption in our business dealings or payments while Danielle was on her trip. "You two live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that? Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. It's not a big deal, right?" Danielle's self-entitled reasoning was beyond infuriating. It was one thing to take money from her son and his wife, but this was not how someone should act after taking someone else's money without their knowledge or consent. "I'm glad you enjoyed your trip, but I'll ask Anthony about the money when he gets back," I replied, my voice clipped. The entire situation was unsettling, and I was eager to get to the bottom of it. "Hey, pause for a moment. Would you care to support us, like this video, and subscribe for more? Now let's dive back into the story. Anthony will understand. After all, I'm his only mother, and $18K isn't much to him," Danielle scoffed before ending the call. I was astounded by her complete lack of awareness and remorse. "Please tell him that, thanks." And with that, she disconnected the call, leaving me to grapple with the unsettling mystery of the missing $18,000. $18,000 in cash sitting in a drawer in our house. What was the money for? "Lauren, do you know about the money I left in the drawer?" Anthony's troubled voice greeted me that night when he returned home. 10 days ago, I withdrew it from my bank account. It's gone now." "It was you keeping such a large sum in a drawer? Didn't you think it was careless?" I exclaimed, my voice laced with disbelief. "I needed cash immediately for an urgent payment. Do you know anything about it?" His eyes searched mine, a flicker of suspicion crossing his face. "It can't be that you—" "No, today Danielle called saying thanks for the $18K, had a blast with it," she said. I didn't understand what she meant. I was relieved that Anthony didn't suspect me, but the mystery deepened. "What? Mom did?" It was Anthony's money after all, but what was such a large amount intended for? "Hey, if it wasn't for a business payment, we've been doing bank transfers for a long time, right? Why cash all of a sudden?" I was starting to understand that it was Anthony's money, but the full picture remained elusive. "So, Mom took it without saying anything. Then it's her fault," Anthony said, his voice a mixture of anger and resignation. "What do you mean?" I asked, still puzzled. Anthony hesitated, then launched into an explanation about why he had left such a large sum of money at home. After limiting Danielle's credit card spending, she had secretly been borrowing money from various sources. This included racking up debt on consumer finance cards and credit cards she had secretly opened. When I found out, I took away all her cards and prepared the cash to repay Danielle's ballooning debt. Although if I gave her cash, she'd just spend it herself, so I planned to pay the institutions directly. Anthony explained, rubbing his temples tiredly. A bank transfer would leave a record in our accounts, and I didn't want too many records in our bank accounts for the sake of trust with our business partners in bookkeeping. That's why I decided to cash it out and pay individually. Supporting Danielle's overseas trip was like a parting gift, as we wouldn't be able to look after her in the same way after moving abroad. So that's what it was. What will become of Danielle now? I asked, a knot of worry forming in my stomach. Debt collection notices and payment demands will probably start coming soon, but since she spent the money herself, there's nothing we can do, Anthony said nonchalantly. A month passed. Why aren't you answering my calls? Danielle's voice was almost a sob. It was jarring to hear her normally confident tone replaced by desperation. I'm sorry, I've been busy with moving preparations. What's wrong? I tried to calm myself down and listen to what Danielle had to say. It was time to hear her side of the story. It's not just what's wrong. They're asking for money and payments almost every day. It's too much, she cried, her voice cracking. What, Anthony? You contacted him, right? He seems to be blocking my calls. I can't get through to him at all. Lauren, you're my only hope now. Please help me. I was surprised that Anthony would take such a drastic step with his mother. If he had paid off Danielle's debts with the money he had prepared, this situation wouldn't have happened. It seemed Danielle was now inundated with collection letters from finance companies and consumer lenders. The collection calls were relentless, and she appeared helpless and overwhelmed. I had never witnessed such a scene before. It was something I thought only happened in television dramas. I'll mention it to Anthony, but I can't say what he'll do, I said, unsure how to handle the situation. A mother in trouble. A son must help, right? Please ask him for me, okay? And with that plea, the call ended. We needed funds for our business expansion overseas, and we couldn't afford to keep bailing Danielle out. Besides, it was her fault for using the money Anthony had prepared to pay off her debts for a lavish trip instead. She had left herself no room for excuses. She called you? Just ignore it. I told Anthony about the call after he returned home that night, looking weary from the day's work. I had planned to sort things out before we left, but she wasted the opportunity herself. He dismissed Danielle's plight coldly. He was right. The money was originally intended to clear her debts, and she squandered it on a luxurious trip. Despite continued calls from Danielle, I finally gave in and blocked her number, just like Anthony had done. A part of me felt sorry for her, being Anthony's mother and all, but there was nothing I could do if Anthony had decided to cut her off. Meanwhile, the day of our move overseas was fast approaching. I had to finish packing. As I looked around our still cluttered room, a wave of sadness washed over me. Danielle had ended up selling her house to try to pay off her debts. In addition to the $18,000 that Anthony had set aside to repay her initial debts, she seemed to have hidden more. The total amount was so large that even after selling her land and house, she couldn't pay it all off. The final balance was unimaginable. Our family home is gone. Are you okay with that? Anthony asked, his voice heavy with emotion. How can I be okay? But there's nothing we can do, I replied, my heart aching for him. Anthony looked genuinely sad. Losing the house where one grew up must feel like an immense loss. Having lost my parents' house early on in life, I understood the profound loneliness of losing a family home. But unlike me, Anthony lost his place to return to because of his loving mother. I couldn't even begin to imagine how that felt. Danielle was now living in a cheap apartment, struggling to repay the remaining debts with a part-time job. At her age, finding work must have been incredibly difficult. I felt a pang of sympathy for her. However, the consequences of her reckless spending led to this. She had no one to blame but herself. Even for the elderly, there must be consequences for their actions. My business was flourishing overseas. The move had brought a surge of inquiries from other brands, and I was getting offers from unexpected places, opportunities I couldn't have imagined back home. It was all Let's conclude the story. Very exciting. My designs were gaining international recognition, and I was finally achieving the success I had always dreamed of. I was grateful for Anthony's unwavering support and the opportunities that our move overseas had brought. But the shadow of Danielle's situation lingered in the back of my mind. Despite her reckless actions and the strain she had put on our relationship, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness for her. She was alone, struggling to make ends meet and estranged from her only son. The family home, a place filled with memories and history, was gone. Anthony remained resolute in his decision to cut ties with his mother. He believed she had made her bed and now had to lie in it. He couldn't forgive her for her financial recklessness and the betrayal he felt when she took the money he had set aside to help her. I understood Anthony's anger and frustration. Danielle's actions had consequences, and she was responsible for the predicament she found herself in. But I also recognized the complex emotions that come with family ties, the deep-seated love and obligation that can be difficult to sever completely. As my career continued to soar, I found myself grappling with a moral dilemma. Could I truly enjoy my success knowing that Danielle was struggling? Was it possible to separate my personal feelings from the business decisions we had made? The questions lingered unresolved. I had achieved my dreams, but the cost felt heavier than I had anticipated. The story of Danielle, Anthony, and me is a reminder that even in the pursuit of success and happiness, there are often complicated emotions and difficult choices to navigate. Family relationships, for better or worse, have a way of shaping our lives in profound and lasting ways. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.